I'm just going to say Murphy took the assignment very seriously. I definitely would have never picked this up otherwise. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about Chess Story by Stefan Zweig. This seems to also be known as the Royal Game, and there's been some different versions. This was, I believe, published in the 40s. I can't specifically recall the year now, but so there's a few different versions around of it. But this is the final work of this author, Stefan Zweig, who is Austrian, and he wrote this after fleeing to Argentina from Austria because of Nazi Germany, basically, which was, like I said, was written right around the time all that was still going on. So that's sort of some of the background there with it. And this is a very short book. And I wasn't really sure what to expect because with these, especially, I wanted to go in blind, but kind of the basic blurb thing mentions that. And one other detail, which I'm going to wait to mention a little bit later about it. But it's a really interesting with a few things here because the writing style flows really nicely, and this is a translation what I read, and so that doesn't always happen. I actually, as a side note, I was gonna do audio because I found an audiobook on Audible for like $2.50 by was it Daniel Allen or something like that, which was 100% AI, and it was not really a person, and it was completely not cool. So apparently that's a thing that we have to watch out for now, where people are going to try and pretend that they narrated audiobooks and upload them to Audible and not have them marked as AI. So that was fun, but I was able to get a refund, thankfully, because wasn't doing that. It was not good. But anyway, so this is translation, though, and I feel like with translations, sometimes it's really hard to keep the original feel with it. So really, really good job, I think, with that translation because it flowed very well and the writing style was very engaging. But it's called Chess Story, and it is focusing largely around chess in a lot of ways, but the real kind of meaning is quite a lot deeper than that. And we start with our main character, who is on a ship that's on its way to Buenos Aires, and he sees that the newer chess grand champion is there, and we learn a bit about this chess grand champion. That he was like a savant, but kind of just came out of nowhere and is completely uneducated about basically everything else, but just plays chess really, really well. And that's kind of, it seems, what the focus of the story is going to be. Because our character and a character, they want to play a game of chess with him. But then we have the introduction of a different character, Dr. B, who ends up being much more seminal and kind of the focus of what we're looking at for a lot of reasons. And then we're really digging into kind of the character. I will say with what's accomplished here in such a really short amount of time, because depending on the version, it ranges from like 80 to 100 pages. I did an ebook of it, so I don't specifically know what like paper count that would be, but it's very short. But there's a lot that's accomplished here, and the parallels, I think, are big time. Now, I will say that I feel like I did not read into this quite as much as some people did. I read some reviews after the fact, just curious to see what other people thought of this, because I know this is really, really highly regarded. And some people read into a lot, which I'm not saying is wrong. I could see some of it, but I didn't go quite as far as some. But I feel like this is one where it's really hard to discuss without spoilers. So we're going to do some spoilers and talk about it here. With this being, I feel like if you're somebody watching this, you probably have read it or you're curious. And I think either way, knowing the spoilers, I don't think is the worst thing on this one necessarily. Although if you're interested to check this one out and try it, then I'll put a timestamp where you can skip to the end, where I just give kind of final thoughts. So anyway, yeah, the look here with our chess grandmaster, where he's just kind of doesn't really care about anybody and is just like treating everybody like they don't really matter. All he cares about is chess, the pieces, that sort of thing. Being an interesting parallel where he is seeming to be kind of a stand-in in some ways for Nazi Germany, Hitler, just throwing lives away in the war, that sort of thing. But the really interesting thing is the character of Dr. B, who, like I said, ends up being the focus. And he was actually not in a concentration camp, but he was captured and detained by the Nazis and just kind of kept in sort of like, it's a hotel room, but like completely isolated and asked to answer questions because he was involved with banking of some important figures in Austria, and it's the descriptions there. And so really a lot of the story is his account about how he was just kind of going crazy, not being able to deal with being completely isolated, and then ends up getting a hold of a book, which is, of course, a chess manual, and how he basically just reads every bit of it and memorizes all of these games because it has these, huge, really well-known games, and then just like imagines himself playing chess against himself to keep himself even some semblance of sane. And he just so happens to then also be on this ship leaving his native Austria, where the author's from, to Buenos Aires, which is, where the author was also headed, where they had headed when we were writing this. So I think somewhat of a stand-in, like I said there, but just kind of going through all of that. And that's what we're really looking at. And it's showing, I think for me at least, the way I was looking at it is looking at the impacts above and separate from just the obvious atrocities that were committed, in World War II by the Nazis and by others. It's not just that, but also it's, intellectually, there was a lot of damage done there as well. And I think it's some of it with seeing like how art is impacted. And I mean, it's a known thing too that the Nazis took and destroyed a lot of art, and also censored a lot of voices as well, as part of that. And knowing that the author did, this is the other thing I didn't mention earlier, the author ended their own life shortly after writing this, and so seeing I think that makes the parallels a lot stronger with Dr. B, the character who's just talking about having to flee and just kind of, feeling all the things they're feeling. I think kind of, for me, that's how I read that parallel, because of that reason. So I thought that was interesting to see. And it's like some people went like really, really further than that, and we're talking, it's something I saw others mention specifically, is the act of being obsessed with one particular thing, which it is specifically mentioned that with the Grandmaster, that he's just like a monomaniac, and that's chess is all he cares about. And we kind of see that with Dr. B, although for different reasons, being really obsessed and just kind of like not being able to handle life. And the book ends sort of abruptly, but it somehow did feel really fitting for me, just with that, and seeing the character just kind of break down, and just the callousness of the Grand Champion. I'm not going to try and say the name, by the way, which is why I've avoided it, because the name is, I don't know how to pronounce it. But so it was like I said, I think that kind of speaks to the themes, and so those definitely come out. Even though we're focusing on this game, and it's the stakes are for both of these people really high, because the chess Grandmaster just absolutely can't imagine losing, and they normally weren't even taking other people seriously, but now they're engaged. Now they're actually like trying to really, really just kill each other, somewhat metaphorically, via the chess game. And so I thought it was, like I said, some interesting parallels, interesting story, although it's not one that I feel like I read into as much as some, maybe just because I don't this sort of literature where you're really supposed to be digging into every tiny little thing as much. I've definitely read some fantasy where you're digging into a lot of stuff and looking for those details. So it's not to say that I haven't read any, but it's a little bit of a different kind of focus, and a kind with what you're looking for in there. So this was really interesting. I would be curious to read some more of this author's work, and I'm still planning to try some classics and other stuff there as well too. So it's definitely something that's interesting, and I would not have picked this up had this not been picked. As I joked in the beginning, it's Murphy took the assignment very seriously, because this was I don't even think I even said this was this was Murphy and Imperi's pick for me. So thanks, Murphy, for making this pick, because this was not something I would have read otherwise, but I had a really interesting time with it. And yeah, overall, I just think it was a very engaging read. The writing really flowed well, and just looking at this story on different levels, the way the story itself was crafted, with the shift in focus, it also reminded me a little bit of like obviously very different, but a little bit of a Count of Monte Cristo, with some of the way things happen with the character of Dr. B. And so I thought that was sort of interesting as well. But just the way the story is crafted, and the deep look into this character's psyche, which in turn is probably giving us some look into the author's psyche at the same time, made it a very, very engaging and very thought-provoking type of read. So I definitely enjoyed this one, and I'd be curious to see more. I've heard from Murphy photography a little bit more about some of this author's other works, which seem very interesting. So I might have to check some more out at some point. But really, those are my thoughts on Chess Story by Stefan Zweig. Let me know if you've read this or this kind of thing, or if there are other like specific like classics, or I mean, this is not as old as a lot of what we call classics, but other stuff like this, in the vein. It's not something I'm super well read on, so I'd be curious to see your thoughts if you have read more of that kind of thing than I have. So definitely let me know in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.